We've been talking about the reviews of the Seahawks draft, and almost across the board, A minus, B plus at worst. Everybody seems to love what they've done with the draft, and we get a chance to speak to a man who evaluates drafts, writes about the draft, does a great job of it for NFL.com. He's with us on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook hotline. He is Eric Edholm. Eric, how are you, man?
I hated their class. No, I'm kidding. I really like
Eric.
I hate to, I wanted to be different. You know, I wanted to come in slinging, come in hot, but just couldn't even pull it off. So
Yeah.
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
We're doing good. We're feeling good. Fans, it's a weird sensation to have almost a consensus on something that any of the teams do in any city, but the fans love this draft. Seems like most of the analysts do. What grade would you give the Seahawks?
Yeah, I mean, you have 11 picks. I mean, that's a good place to start too, right? And you can afford misses. You know, I mean, I know that sounds pretty elementary, but I mean that's part of the thing. And you know, I think it was a good mix of floor and ceiling. You know, you have these potential players through the middle of the draft there, Manori, Arroyo, Jaylen Milroe. You know, big upside players who, man, if they max out, you know, this could be a class that we talk about for a long time. You know, I would say that they got a really nice value in Riley Mills. Probably isn't going to be available till later in the year, if at all. But still, I mean, that knocked him down maybe a round or two. I thought he was a big piece that was missing for Notre Dame down the stretch. Torrey Horton was a really nice college receiver who does a lot of good things well. And Ricky White, too. I mean, he's going to make the team on special teams if he does. But he's just one of those guys that was such a fun player to watch and had a pretty good career at UNLV and had some kick blocking experience and he's a little slender, but a fun player nonetheless. So, yeah, I mean, top to bottom, there really wasn't a pick that I looked at and said, oh, I don't know about that. Maybe a little thinner on the trenches than, you know, I mean, again, I understand they still use, 4 picks on linemen, but you know, I guess if that was a question, that still could exist.
Yeah, Eric, what about Gray Zable specifically? I mean, I think the only criticism, I guess, could be FCS school, but I mean, you know, some of the competition. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, it seems like, and also seems like the Senior Bowl is really important to the drafters, right? I mean, and he was great there.
Especially for an FCS player. But at this point, I don't even consider North Dakota State FCS anymore. Yeah. I mean, they've produced so much NFL talent. It's you know, there are plenty of big schools out there that don't have as consistent a program as they do, even with coaching changes and whatnot. So impressive stuff there. And so he came into the Senior Bowl with a good reputation. And I think that at that point there was some early second, late first buzz, you know, before the first practice. And you can go back and check my tweets. I know I put something out on him, and I said, he's the best guy I've seen through 2 days. You know, like up front, this is the best offensive lineman in Mobile, in my opinion. Some of these guys I had seen before, some of them I hadn't. I had only watched on TV, but, you know, it was right from the get-go. He looked the part, has played every position. You know, I can't help but think that makes a great center, possibly a guard down the road or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know that you're gonna see him much at tackle, but in his career, but he should be an excellent interior guy. And you know, I mean, it's who they wanted. The coaches wanted him. Front office obviously signed off on him, and it makes a lot of sense.
Hey, what is your read on Nicki Manori? We had a chance to catch up with him today. We're going to play that conversation coming up at 5:00. But really, just impressed with his attitude. I loved he had his conversation with the media right after being drafted, and he had a little edge to him. He made it clear he felt like he was a first round talent, and he said, you know, all those other teams are on the list. he's making a list of it, and I love that about him. But just as a player, what he brings to the field, what's your take on him?
Yeah, my first exposure to him live was actually at a game. A friend of mine was turning 50. We went to a South Carolina game, and I said, who's Seven? You know, I mean, I knew about him before, but couldn't help but notice time and time again. In fact, there was a great play in that game where he essentially induced a personal foul flag and then turned to the bench and bowed. I mean, he's going to be a showman, you know. This is a game. Go watch the game. You'll see the moment. But you know, he lived a lot up around the line of scrimmage, as you can see for a guy his size. That makes a lot of sense. And they had a defensive line at South Carolina, so he was shielded a little bit, protected pretty well, but you saw him flying from the backside, making plays. I wish he was a little bit more consistent a tackler. I felt like that's still an area he can clean up, but you could say that about a lot of players. I mean, what you can't say is the guy with, an all-time combine performance at his dimensions was tremendous there this year. And the question is not necessarily figuring out where he's going to play, but what can't he do? You know what I mean? Like, I think Derwin James took a few years to really kind of settle into a role in the league, and we've seen guys like this, in the wrong hands or maybe miscast a little bit, struggle to find their footing, but sounds like they're open to him doing a little bit of everything. I hope he can master one or two things year one and then kind of branch out from there.
Sounds like you're not on his list, Eric. So that's good.
I did that just for his purpose. Yeah.
Hey, what have you thought about, just in general over the years with the Seahawks? Bob mentioned, I mean, it really is complaint free pretty much as far as our texters and what you read from, Twitter and whatnot. And just, it's kind of been maybe a little bit of a weak point for Schneider as far as, drafting offensive linemen, and really only got one. So I don't know if that's, as far as in the first round.
Right.
But,
one real, yeah.
Yeah, big time prospect there. But just over the years, what have you thought about the Seahawks drafts?
Yeah, they're an interesting program, obviously, and I've talked to a lot of people who have, either come from somewhere else and gone there, and then or started there and gone elsewhere, and they all know, like, they have their own system. They do it their way, and I have a lot of respect for that. Obviously, you tweak it, you adjust it throughout the years, but they've always been a their kind of guy drafting team, and sometimes it's worked fabulously. They've obviously had wild rashes of success, and then other years where it's been really lean. Like, I can't say I love the LJ Collier pick. You know what I mean? Just like at the time, even if I thought
you weren't alone,
that's their guy, maybe take him around later or something. But we've seen teams have that approach and still have success with it. Obviously you could say that about Zable. Like, maybe not everybody had him quite that high, but they weren't getting them 5 picks later. You know what I mean? I think there was somebody behind them that would have pulled the trigger. So it's just every team's going to look at this process differently, and I respect them for kind of having their system and going with the guys that they feel sort of most compelled with or compelled by, I guess, to, just more a feeling about this player is our kind of guy. He fits our system. He does what we want to do. It's not necessarily all about where they're ranked or what the league value is. At the end of the day, you got to find guys who make sense for your team.
Well, I would say the pick that probably got the most buzz was their third-round selection of Jaylen Milroe. Well, I don't know if people were surprised, excited, maybe a combo of both. But what's your take on Milroe and his pro prospects? Yeah,
he was a fascinating guy to study, and it did feel like he took a step back this year. You could blame some of that on a coaching change, and I would think it was his fourth offensive coordinator, third at least, 2 under Saban, and then Kalen DeBoer's system, which was a departure, and it really wasn't a perfect fit for his skill set. So there is some excusing away what happened, but just the inconsistency wasn't there. The consistency wasn't there. That's what you notice most. He has the arm talent to make it in this league. He's obviously a blessed runner. When he gets the crease, he can take it. And that's obviously the beauty of an athletic quarterback, is that they have a pretty good floor, right? They do something well that should translate pretty easily. Everyone's going to compare him to Lamar. He's not that, at least not yet. Could he become something in that mold at some point? Absolutely. And when you have a starting quarterback, I don't know the contract details exactly, but essentially a short-term deal that you can get out of easily if it's not going to work. This is a fascinating stab at greatness. I don't think it's going to be perfect at first, but then again, Lamar wasn't either. I watched Lamar in training camp live and thought, oh boy, this may not work. He had some rough practices. He did.
Yeah.
3 months later, he was lighting up the league. So it just, sometimes the light can go on, and I've heard nothing but kind of amazing things about his character too. Like everybody said, this this is a guy you want to go into battle with and has some real discipline, and he's a winner.
Eric Edholm, NFL.com lead draft writer, has been our guest here with Wyman and Bob. Eric, great stuff as always. We appreciate you taking some time with us today. Thanks so much.